Scotland sells you castles, famous viewpoints, and the same 5 stops everyone posts. You can spend a full week here, do everything right, and still leave without seeing the real Scotland. The version that doesn't try to entertain you and doesn't care if you find it. The real Scotland isn't popular because it's not easy to reach and it's not easy to understand. In Quiraing Village, the road feels like it ends on purpose. One row of houses sits pinned between cliff and sea, with no space to grow and no margin when the weather turns. With red squirrels, Scotland becomes a chase. They're rare across much of Britain, still holding on here. But you don't spot them. You catch a flash, then they're gone unless you're in the right place at the right time. In Quiraing Blackhouse Village, Scotland stops being a photo and starts being a reality check. Stone walls, thatched roofs, and living conditions built for survival, not comfort. Stay with me. Most people come to Scotland and never get this close. By the end, you'll know exactly where the real Scotland has been hiding. A mountain maze holds Loch so dark that strange ripples move even when the air feels still, and the first thought is that something huge is awake under the water. The Scottish Highlands stretch with ridges and valleys where stories cling to every rock and pool. On lonely hills, tales tell of vampire women who dance with hunters until they fall, then reveal hooves where feet should be. Lochs here do weird things with light, bending reflections so much that a single boat can look like a row of black humps sneaking across the water. At certain summits, compasses swing wildly even when laid flat on stone, as if the mountain itself pulls the needle in circles. Some cliffs carry a shape called a Brocken spectre, where a hiker's shadow stretches huge across the fog with a bright halo. And at the edge, there is a fort on a rocky point where monster sightings cluster. Being there at night feels like standing in the front row of a show that is about to start. It once stood as a powerful fortress on the shore, hit again and again by raids, sieges, and explosions that left chunks of its gatehouse lying where they fell. The main tower partly collapsed during a violent storm, and the ruin now leans over the Loch like a broken tooth, watching whatever moves in the water below. Stories say witches were forced to raise the fortress with supernatural power, turning bare rock into walls and towers built by hands that were not entirely human. The last soldiers who left the stronghold blew up the entrance on purpose, leaving shattered stone blocks as if the place tried to bite and lost its jaw. Sometimes shattered remains of the destroyed gateway are described as evidence of that final blast, scattered where they landed. Moreover, photos taken inside the towers show strange forms, with a pale skull-like blur or a lion figure floating in midair that was not seen at the time. And just beyond the broken towers, a long trench of water, is where a legendary creature has surfaced many times, turning the ruins into front row seats for a famous mystery. Loch Ness once had a person dragged underwater by a water beast, with the attack stopping only when onlookers shouted and made signs from the bank. For a long time, people treated the long waterway as dangerous, and river mouths linked to it were avoided because of sudden drownings and strange accidents. The Loch has also seen real tragedy, with boating accidents and lost aircraft during conflicts, leaving bodies and wrecks on the bed, not just rumoured creatures. Divers exploring wrecks say the water is so dark that a huge shadow can pass only a few metres away without showing its form, feeding more fear about what moves below. During waves of monster fever, hotels filled with search teams who brought strange devices, turning a quiet stretch into a floating lab. Above the loch, industrial waste once stained the water, leading some to blame unusual creature claims on pollution and rising fear about what had been disturbed. The currents crash hard into a rock bowl here, and the spray hangs in the air like smoke, while the sound rattles through the trees like distant thunder. Staring at the falling water for too long can make the cliffs seem to crawl upward, a strange eye trick first noted here when a watcher thought the rocks had begun to climb. In the past, the falls were chained to heavy pipes and tunnels for an aluminium works, turning this wild drop into raw power that melted metal day and night. Former workers spoke of a low humming in the gorge long after the turbines shut down, as if the walls kept replaying the vibration of the generators. Farther along the shoreline, a quiet canal village hides a former war fort that once watched the area like an unblinking eye, alert to trouble from both water and hills. Fort Augustus began as a harsh garrison post on a narrow strip of land, built to tightly control Highland roads and ensure that no one could pass without coming under its guns. The town grew under strict army rules, with even ordinary daily routines subject to constant inspection. During uprisings, the post served as a base for severe crackdowns, and commands issued within its walls reshaped the wider Highlands in brutal ways. After the wars, the military complex was converted into a religious abbey, transforming a symbol of armed control into one of strict spiritual discipline. The same stone that once echoed with marching boots later held long, silent nights of prayer. The construction of the Caledonian Canal then turned the town into a control point for water traffic, making the community a gatekeeper between seas. In nearby fields, European badgers work quietly at night, digging twisting sets beneath former military roads and turning a once rigid place into a network of soft, shifting tunnels. It has a stocky body with a bold black and white mask that works like built-in night camouflage in patchy moonlight. Its front claws are strong and curved, able to slice into packed earth like metal hooks, letting it dig tunnels faster than many animals can run. A badger can reverse through tight tunnels almost as quickly as it moves forward, using its broad back and powerful legs like a living bulldozer underground. Its nose and whiskers scan grass as it walks, detecting tiny movements under the soil to pinpoint worms and insects without seeing them. When it scratches the ground, it is not only cleaning claws but also leaving scent from special glands between its toes, quietly marking paths only other badgers can read. At night, badgers perform latrine walks, visiting the same poo pits near their set, which helps keep their home clean and maps their territory like a network of small signposts. Often, they even reach the sweeping railway of stone curves through Highland, where the Glenfinnan Viaduct rises across the valley. This famous railway is a curving mountain line that carries steam trains over a high valley, where stone arches feel close enough to touch from the hill slopes. It was built as part of a remote Highland rail line, pouring wet concrete into tall, hollow piers that had never held such weight before. During construction, a horse and cart were said to have fallen into a hollow pier shaft, with the concrete poured on top, so the animal remained buried inside the viaduct. However, it only became famous after serving as a fantasy film location for the Harry Potter series, and since then, people have risked walking on the live tracks to take pictures. Rail police have had to warn visitors because steam drivers have hit the brakes hard after spotting people frozen on the line, as if they had forgotten a real train was coming. It has become so famous that roads are jammed with parked cars, with some residents calling its popularity a curse that chokes daily life. Beyond the winding road along the railway, a stone stronghold rests on a tiny island at the meeting of sea lochs, linked to the shore by a low bridge. Island Donan was built to control sea routes, acting as a hard gate where warships once had to pass under its guns. An early ruler had dozens of so-called wrongdoers executed in one sweep here, then ordered their heads placed on spikes along the walls. The fortress later became a base for armed rebels backed by foreign troops, turning the tiny island into a powder store crammed with barrels of explosives. Three warships sailed in and bombarded the stronghold for days, hammering it with cannon fire until sections of the heavy walls began to break apart. After the surrender, government soldiers stacked hundreds of barrels of gunpowder inside the building and blew the place apart from within. Far inland, a huge mountain towers over the Western Highlands, with a summit that holds the remains of a volcanic crater smashed by ice and weather. Ben Nevis grew from fire and was then shaped by ice into cliffs, gullies, and a broken bowl near the top that feels like standing inside a furnace. Climbers on the upper slopes describe an instant, heavy dread, as if the whole peak presses down on the chest when clouds roll in. Some blame it on seeing a giant human-like form in the mist, linked to the Grey Man legend, watching from the ridge before fading into the cloud. Steep gullies on the north face have claimed lives in unexpected slips, giving certain routes a hard reputation, even among skilled climbers. Additionally, whiteouts can erase all sense of direction so quickly that people have walked toward cliff edges thinking they were on safe ground. In the forests below such highlands, a huge grouse known as the Buachaille struts through the trees like a feathered brawler ready for a fight. It is a giant forest grouse with a heavy body and a fantail that opens like a hand when it shows off. Its beak is short and strong, built to snap off tough needles and buds that many birds cannot chew. Males make a strange song that starts like popping clicks and ends in a scraping hiss, sounding almost mechanical. Close up. On the ground it walks with a slow, stomping stride through grass and heather, pushing plants aside with its chest. When it scratches, it digs with strong feet to uncover grit and food, leaving messy, shallow pits scattered around display spots. At dawn, males stand on branches or clear patches and perform fierce displays, charging anything that moves into their chosen arena. These magnificent animals often get lost on a stone pyramid at the pass's mouth, where cliffs close in sharply, giving the area a gatekeeper feel. Buachaille Etive Moor rises above two valleys and was formed to watch over moving animals. Rumours say shapeshifters once fought across this mountain, turning into deer, warriors, ghosts, dragons, and even worms as they battled for control of the area. Climbers have vanished on its slopes in clear weather, leaving neat camps and gear behind, with no trace on rock that feels too open to hide anyone. Others hear calm, clear instructions in their heads on where to place hands and feet, then later find that the voice had saved them from collapsing cornices. A valley gouged by ice stretches behind the mountain with steep walls and old scars, and that is where Glen runs between cliffs that hold one of the harshest stories in Highland history. It is a volcanic glen reshaped by ice, but its fame comes from a massacre where guests turned on their hosts in a night of murder under trust. Soldiers who had eaten, slept, and shared fires in this glen once rose before dawn and attacked their hosts inside their own homes. Every year around the date of the massacre, shadowy forms are said to be seen crouching among the crags, as if fugitives still hide from a danger that never ends, which gave it the name Valley of Sorrow. Others hear faint screams and the clash of weapons in empty side gullies, with no camp, speakers or people nearby. In addition, a witch named Corag is linked to this glen. She is said to have warned of the bloodshed and later threw a cursed sword into nearby waters in an attempt to end its dark run. Before big storms, the keening woman is said to wail in the wind here, her voice rising like a warning that something terrible is about to happen. This even causes panic among wild herds of red deer, which usually move like shadows along the skyline. They have long, powerful bodies with slim legs built to move quickly across open hills and boggy ground. The stag grows branched antlers of hard bone that become more complex each year, turning its head into a living crown of spikes. During the rut, stags roar across the glen, using sound to scare rivals before they even see one another. When two stags clash, they lock antlers and push with all their weight, using neck and shoulder strength, like wrestlers driving a heavy gate. Herds often stand in loose groups, with one or two animals keeping watch while others feed with their heads down, ready to bolt at the slightest movement. At dusk, a line of red deer on a ridge can look like a row of statues, with antlers drawing sharp outlines that remain visible long after the bodies fade into the gloom. A lava flow once cooled into neat stone tubes, and waves later punched a tunnel through them that now sings back every crash like a giant organ across the region. Fingal's cave lies on an island, formed as a sea cavern cut into perfect hexagonal columns with an unusually regular form. There was allegedly a giant who built a stone road across the sea, with this cavern marking one end of that path. The floor is made of stepped columns, making entry feel like climbing a broken staircase, built for something far heavier than a regular person. The roof arch focuses sound so sharply that a single shout can bounce around as a strange chord instead of a normal echo. The same lava field once stretched toward the Giant's Causeway, making this cave feel like a missing chapter of the same formation. Only the tiny wanderers that drag borrowed armour across the shore know the true story. Hermit crabs have been here for decades, with soft, twisted tails that cannot face open water, and they slide those tails into empty shells like ready-made shields. They test new shells by tapping, rolling and peeking inside before deciding whether the fit is good enough to move in. Shell choice is precise, as they weigh thickness and weight against their own bodies, trading up only when new armour offers better protection. Hermit crabs sometimes gather in groups around a single spare shell, each waiting for another to move so a full upgrade chain can begin. Sensitive feelers and claws check for tiny calcium traces, helping them find real shells instead of useless stones. When walking over sand or seagrass, hermit crabs use their long eye stalks to watch above the shell edge while the rest of their bodies stay hidden. A broad coastal and inland region holds farms, harsh cliffs, fortresses, and fishing towns that share one long story of storms and power. Aberdeenshire extends from sea edges to high ground, with estates and strongholds that once controlled trade routes and law across the northeast. Its coast has seen ships smashed on rocks in sudden gales that turned calm water into foam in a single tide. Fortresses here carry stories of family feuds so fierce that entire halls were burned while people tried to shelter inside. Inland lochs held island forts that shifted from hunting lodges to prisons, then to hiding places during times of rebellion. A fishing hamlet was squeezed onto a sliver of rock in this region, thin enough that front doors open almost straight onto the sea. Crovey village lines up in one long row beneath sheer cliffs, leaving almost no space for roads or gardens between houses and waves. The famous storm of the early 50s hit hard, collapsing cottages, washing away sheds, and sending heavy fishing gear rolling in the surf like toys. After that night, many homes were left roofless or twisted, and a large part of the village was simply walked away from because rebuilding felt impossible there. Modern conservation documents still flag movement and damage risks along the front, and even now, the village lives with the idea that another major storm could redraw its layout. a short drive inland from this tight coastal strip, high ground and wide plateaus open into one of the largest protected mountain areas in the region, known as the Cairngorms National Park. It covers mountain massifs where winter can bite hard, while nearby glens remain more gentle. At its centre, early pine woods shelter wildlife corridors, linking high ground with river valleys. On the high plateau, a school group once walked into a white wall of storm, lost the path, and several never returned, turning this flat top into one of the most feared places in the mountains. At its loches, a glowing white shape known as the Viaduct is said to roam at night, its high scream heard just before grim news reaches nearby homes. At present, the calm waters of the park feel more like a warning sign than a peaceful view. Meanwhile, nearby, a sea cliff was turned into a fierce fortress, where the entire power struggles for a whole region once hinged on what happened inside its walls. Dunnottar clings to that rock as if welded in place, with ruins that still show where war, siege and punishment were pushed to extremes. It became a central control point in national conflicts, with whoever held this outcrop able to tilt major political fights far beyond the coastline. Its position made it a chosen place for storing high-value treasures and high-risk prisoners, turning the entire rock into a symbol of protection and fear. At one point, the crown jewels of the nation were secretly smuggled out from Dunnottar under the noses of besieging forces, turning the fortress into a giant decoy. This area shifts from royal refuge to torture ground to dramatic ruin, and the setting feels like a timeline of power pushed too far on a single piece of stone. In later years, only small creatures, like red squirrels, move in nearby woods, hopping through trees above a coastline that once rang with sieges instead of claws on bark. It has sharp ear tufts and a slim body that lets it vanish among branches like a moving leaf. Its tail works like a steering fan, helping it twist mid-air and land cleanly on thin branches after wild jumps. A red squirrel can hang upside down on rough bark using only its curved claws, holding still while it checks for danger. When it looks for food, it turns cones with its paws and slices off scales in a spiral, leaving neat cobs that show exactly how it eats. On the ground, it performs short, nervous dashes with sudden freezes, using silence and quick bursts of speed to stay ahead of predators. Near ponds or wet ground, it leans low to drink, keeping its tail high and ready to spring back to a tree at the first wrong sound. Even near a tiny coastal village beneath high cliffs, the red squirrel is often seen darting past people in pennon. This place is squeezed beside the water and a steep slope, leaving every house feeling pinned in place amid waves and falling earth. A single row of houses is trapped between a pounding sea at the front and an unpredictable wall of earth at the back, making the whole town feel as if it is sandwiched in danger. The village became world famous when it played the role of a fictional town in the film Local Hero, with its red phone box becoming an unlikely star. People travel there just to stand by that booth and make a call, turning a simple structure into a kind of movie shrine. Disaster risk grew serious enough that Pennon's name appeared in national news as a place that might not survive its own cliff. To cope, the village has had to fight to keep its access road open, its cliff stable, and its phone box preserved, turning daily life into a long negotiation with nature and preservation rules. An island of sharp ridges, sea cliffs and black rock has gathered many myths, and almost every valley, pool and pinnacle comes with a strange story. The Isle of Skye spreads out like a broken crown of stone, with each spike tied to tales of giants, fairy courts, and deals that went badly wrong. It also has fairy pools, where clear water steps down in basins, pale enough that swimmers talk about feeling watched from just below the surface. In the mountains called Quiraing, a violent outlaw named Quiraing is said to roam as a restless ghost after taking the life of a woman, and later his own son, hiding the severed head in a well. The Old Man of Storr rises above the land as a jagged pillar that some stories call the buried thumb of a fallen giant. Another tale says this formation is a stone couple, frozen by fairy trickery after being offered a false promise to stay together forever. At the far edge of the island, Neist Point juts out toward the horizon with a lighthouse at its tip, turning the story into a narrow finger pointing straight into open water. This site feels like the end of solid ground, where the last steps before the drop make the island seem tiny against the open ocean. The shape of the headland gives Neist Point the appearance of a stone ship's prow pushing into the sea, with nothing ahead but water. The lighthouse complex was built because this single promontory stood in the middle of a ship graveyard, a stretch of coast where navigation errors often ended in shattered hulls on rocks. Neist Point became known to sailors as a last hope marker, where spotting the beam could mean survival, and missing it might leave a record of accidents. The whole site later shifted from a busy, round-the-clock manned station to fully abandoned quarters in a single transition, leaving a functioning light beside empty homes. Keepers' living spaces still stand near the cliff edge, quietly facing a place where storms batter the rocks and fog swirls around the beam. Just inland, a jagged pinnacle called the Old Man of Store rises from Skye's slopes, full of tales of giants, fairy bargains, and stone figures frozen forever in the sky. It was once a high volcanic plateau, and what remains now is like a wrecked rim where the middle has slumped and torn open. One legend says the entire hill is the grave of a giant, with the old man as the only part that refused to sink when the rest of the body was buried by sliding earth. Another tale claims the store formed when fairies froze a giant midfall, turning the entire landslip into a stone trap so the huge body could never reach the sea. Like a lighthouse, the formation has guided sailors, who aligned its jagged profile with other peaks to navigate dangerous waters. Because the slope is still moving, engineers monitor this zone carefully, aware that sections could shift again and alter the famous outline. Far above this restless rock, charged particles from space sometimes light up the sky in green and red ribbons. Over Skye, the Northern Lights are nicknamed Merry Dancers, seen as sky warriors locked in a wild fight above the islands. Old tales warn that whistling or waving at them draws attention, as if the sky itself could bend down to snatch loud mouths away. The red in the aurora is said to be blood from those battles, dripping into stones that still carry tiny flecks of crimson. When the lights sweep over the Trottenish Ridge, the hills look like black teeth under a moving green river, making the ground feel small and the sky immense. Strong aurora storms can make compasses behave oddly and set radio signals buzzing, as if the air itself becomes an invisible wire. On one sea cliff, the same coloured light once flared so low that birds launched off their ledges in panic, and far away stands a stone fortress guarding a magic cloth. The Dunvegan castle's most famous object, the fairy flag, is said to hold only 3 full uses of its power, like a spell with a fixed number of charges, before disaster strikes. It allegedly came from a fairy bride forced to leave, who handed over the cloth at a bridge as a final promise of aid in desperate times. Some believed it was made from the gear of a thunder spirit, making every unfurling feel like calling lightning to fight on the clan's side. Its powers include multiplying warriors on the battlefield, as if ghostly fighters bolstered the clan's numbers whenever the banner flew. It is also linked to curing cattle plagues, with tales of dying herds returning to full health after the flag was raised. The entire fortress was a centre of fury as well, with curses cast by wronged women or mystical figures, warning that cruelty within its walls would bring slow decay to stone and lineage. Far across the island, a massive landslide tore a hillside apart, leaving rock towers, tilted slabs, and hidden platforms that resemble frozen waves. The Quiraing is part of a massive sliding ridge where the terrain still shifts, forcing the road below to be repaired repeatedly. One flat grassy shelf sits high above cliffs, as a hidden field dropped from the mountaintop. A cow once hid there, kept far from raiders who sailed the sea and never thought to look upward. Rock formations have names such as the Needle and the Prison, suggesting that the entire area resembles a crumbled fortress. The fractured ground holds pockets of echo, where a single shout returns from the wrong direction, confusing many hikers' sense of distance. Fog can roll into the maze thickly enough that trails disappear, turning short walks into long searches between walls of stone. Highland cattle, the same species that once outsmarted raiders, carry long sweeping horns and a thick coat of hair that drapes over their eyes like a built-in hood. Their double-layered fur allows them to endure harsh weather, while other breeds need shelter, and they often rest directly on open hillsides. A cattle uses its broad nose and long tongue to pull heather and coarse grass that softer breeds usually ignore. Their slow grazing style can turn rough terrain into open patches, acting like mowers that create space for other plants and wildlife. Folds move as calm herds, grooming one another with horns and tongues, which helps control parasites and strengthens social bonds. They are curious and often approach fences or paths to observe, then stand almost motionless while their hair drifts over their eyes. Not far from where some of these shaggy animals roam, a small valley of mounds and mini ridges feels like a pocket world of spirals and stories known as the Fairy Glen. It is above a winding road near Uig, with a central crag called Castle Ewan that rises like a tiny stone keep. The mounds across the area form neat cones, regular and smooth enough that people once thought someone had stacked the ground by hand. the entire valley resulted from a landslip that slumped off the hillside, making the Glen literally a piece of hill that tried to crawl away. Its name, Fairy Glen, arose because the place looked unreal, making tales of hidden beings easier to imagine than simply saying, "It is just geology." Guides and writers often note that there is no single official legend here, which leaves the area like a blank page, inviting new stories. Current warnings advise against moving any stones in the Glen, as constant rearranging is slowly scraping away its living surface. A whole village once ran on coal and salt, with tunnels under the sea, imprisoned witches, and smoking pans on the shore, turning it into a noisy industrial lab. Culross's moat pit mine extended a shaft beneath the water, allowing miners to walk below the seabed while ships sailed directly overhead. Coal from the area did not just heat homes, but also boiled seawater in long salt pans, creating a line of steaming ponds that fueled the town's fortune. A huge storm later smashed the sea mine, flooding the shaft so quickly that the grand undersea project collapsed, leaving a drowned tunnel. The palace in the centre of the village grew from that wealth, and every painted room and timber beam rests on the back of mines, salt fires, and hard labour. Moreover, witch hunts were conducted so fiercely that at least 32 women were accused, jailed, and tried, making this small burg a hotspot of panic. Suspected ones were confined in the townhouse, locked in cramped attic cells where torture and brutal questioning were used to extract confessions. Far off the mainland, wind and waves wrap around low islands that hold more stories than their size seems to allow. The Orkneys comprise a scattered group of rocky and lush islands marked by sea raids, stone circles, and subterranean dwellings. On moors and hills, standing stones and chambered tombs lie close together, turning parts of the islands into a vast ritual zone, frozen in time. Along high cliffs, storms batter the rocks so fiercely that entire sections have fallen into the sea, taking paths and perhaps unrecorded sites with them. The Yesnaby sea cliffs rise on Orkney's west coast as tall walls of sandstone carved into stacks, arches and inlets hammered by the Atlantic. Its face features stone layers formed in deserts, with fossil stromatolites that resemble rock bubbles, frozen in time when this area was submerged under shallow water. Some formations are nicknamed horsetooth stones because their jagged shapes resemble giant fossil teeth jammed into the edge. The walls drop into geos and blowholes where waves shoot spray upward sharply, giving the impression that the sea is trying to punch a hole in the sky. One story speaks of a Yesnaby healer, a woman said to stop bleeding from afar, turning this edge-of-the-world cliff into a strange kind of outdoor clinic of whispers and charms. Some believe birds like Atlantic puffins come in from the open water to assist her, landing on grassy ledges like tiny, bright-faced pilots at the very edge of the drop. They look almost toy-like at first glance, with a stocky body, short neck, and a big, multicoloured bill shaped like a sideways wedge. Their bill plates grow brighter in the breeding season, then shed and dull at sea, making the face seem to change outfits between summer cliffs and winter oceans. Puffins dig their own burrows in grassy cliff tops, using their bills as shovels and their feet as paddles, kicking soil backward in fast bursts. On land, they perform a pelican walk, stepping with exaggerated stiff legs and an upright body, which acts as a challenge display to other puffins. They often stand in tight groups facing all directions, each bird watching a different slice of sky and sea, like a living radar ring. In flight, puffins beat their wings so fast that they look almost too small to carry them, yet they skim just above the waves for long distances to reach feeding grounds. On a far shore, stone homes half buried in grass hold the remains of a vanished community, and that is where Neolithic Skara Brae waits by the sea. It is a stone-built Neolithic village on Orkney, with connected dwellings sunk into the ground and linked by roofed passageways. Each home contains stone beds, shelves, and central hearths, with the furniture integrated into the structure itself, like a built-in survival kit. A scattered line of beads at the site was once interpreted as someone fleeing a catastrophe, catching jewellery on a doorway and tearing it apart while running. Early excavators thought the settlement was much younger, but later research pushed its story far back, making it older than many well-known monuments elsewhere. Some initial ideas suggested that a sudden disaster had buried the village in wind-blown sand, preserving it like a stone-time capsule. However, new theories indicate that erosion and harsh storms gradually forced abandonment, with homes sealed as shifting sands and sea spray made life increasingly difficult. Nearby, on a narrow strip of land between two lochs, tall stones rise in a circle that feels like stepping into a constellation made of rock. The Ring of Brodgar is a large stone circle, part of the heart of Neolithic Orkney, built as a ritual or ceremonial site. The circle once held around 60 stones, though fewer remain upright, still forming a clear loop within a wide circular ditch cut into the earth. Some theories suggest the arrangement aligned with the sun's movements at solstices and equinoxes, turning the stones into a kind of giant calendar. Excavations around the area uncovered walls that once controlled access, indicating that only certain people could enter the central arena. There are also folklore stories of giants dancing in a ring while a fiddler played, staying out too long and turning into stone when the sun rose. Beyond the site, an earl's broken skull, witch trials in a church, and prisoners dropped straight from courtroom to cell all haunt one red stone giant in Kirkwall. St Magnus Cathedral is a massive red and yellow sandstone church in Kirkwall, built as a shrine to a slain Viking earl whose martyr story turned this place into a magnet for power and devotion. The whole building was started to house the relics of Magnus, a peaceful earl who was betrayed on the island of Eaglesay and struck down by an axe blow in a so-called peace meeting. His body first lay where he fell, and the rocky ground around the grave was said to turn green, sparking a rush of miracle stories that forced rulers to treat him as a saint. When the cathedral rose, Magnus's bones were hidden inside a pillar, literally turning him into part of the building's spine. A volcanic lump of rock rises from the land here, formed into a fortress so important that whoever held it once felt they controlled the entire country. It perches on a crag above a narrow river crossing, and long served as a gate that armies had to pass to move north or south. The stronghold has been attacked or besieged at least 16 times, making it one of the most contested positions in the region. During the famous siege of 1304, huge machines hurled stones, lead balls stripped from church roofs, and burning substances at the walls day and night. Alchemists worked within its walls on quinta essentia, seeking a perfect fifth element in hidden furnaces, blending science, magic, and royal funding. One even tried human flight using wings, leaping from the walls in an early Birdman attempt that ended painfully on the rock below. A long glen, carved by fire and ice, became a refuge where fugitives once vanished into cloud and rock, as if the valley itself had swallowed them on purpose. Glen Etive stretches from high peaks where desperate runaways traded safety for a life watched only by ravens and storms. Warriors also once crossed these slopes, aware that the valley could conceal ambushes in every fold and that any wrong step might end with blades flashing from the rocks. A tragic woman's grief was said to soak into the soil so deeply that some pools earned a name for drawing people into silence. Rockfalls start without warning, with small stones rattling like footsteps before larger chunks break loose high above. Over the moors and riverbanks, a black and grey bird with sharp eyes picks through carcasses and debris. The hooded crow wears a grey body with a black head, wings and tail, giving it the look of a bird already dressed for a funeral. Its beak is strong enough to punch into tough food like shells and gristle, turning hard scraps into easy meals. This crow drops shells and crabs from the air onto rocks to smash them open, turning gravity into its hammer. It hides spare food in gutters, flower pots and soil, then returns later using memory, sharp enough to outsmart other scavengers. The hooded crow raids nests for eggs and chicks as easily as it picks through roadkill, switching from hunter to cleaner in a heartbeat. It walks with a slow, testing step across grass, watching for any movement it can turn into a meal, from worms to dropped scraps. A windswept island at the edge of the sea has carried tales of stones, spirits and lost sailors for longer than anyone can clearly trace. The Isle of Lewis occupies the northern part of a vast outer island, where peat, rock and surf have shaped a landscape that feels older than most written records. Inland lochs ripple suddenly, starting from the centre with no bird landing and no stone thrown. Shipwrecks along the coast have spilled cargo onto the sands, and locals sometimes discover strange objects washed ashore after nights of roaring surf. Legends speak of fairy paths, invisible lines across which houses endured ceaseless misfortune until entrances were moved away. On the western shore, tall stone pillars rise in enigmatic patterns, forming places where sky and earth converge in precise alignment. The Callanish stones rise on the Isle of Lewis, featuring a central circle with long arms arranged like a cross etched into the earth. For centuries, the site lay hidden beneath layers of peat, concealing the full arrangement like a dormant stone mechanism buried underground. Early accounts describe the formations as people turned to rock by magic, trapped in a ring as punishment. Another legend claims they were false men, condemned to remain in place for lies or stubbornness. The monuments align with rare lunar events, including a cycle that culminates when the moon appears to glide low along a nearby ridge, glowing like a serpent. Archaeological evidence also reveals burials within the complex, suggesting it functioned as both a ritual centre and a gravesite. Quiraing Blackhouse Village grew on rocky, infertile ground, and every piece of soil and strip of seaweed had to be dragged, cut and stacked just to sustain the inhabitants. In the Blackhouse era, smoke from peat fires filled the interiors so densely that beams and walls took on a glossy black sheen, as if coated in tar. People and livestock shared a single long roof, with the warmth of cattle helping humans endure the harsh weather raging beyond the stone enclosures. The settlement's arrangement channels the elements, causing gusts to slam against certain gables, like a giant hand pushing the dwellings downhill. Wind howled through the narrow spaces between structures so fiercely that on some nights it resembled voices quarrelling from door to door. Above the shoreline, a cluster of stone and thatch buildings rises, once left to decay but later restored as a frozen portrait of austere island existence. The community was nearly lost when residents departed, with roofs sagging and stones slipping, threatening to return the site to complete ruin. Another broad freshwater body fills a long glen in the region, dotted with islands, deep basins, and enough watery tails to make the whole area feel alive. Loch Lomond also carries the memory of a major boating disaster, where a packed pleasure vessel capsized near the shore, turning a day out into mass drowning within minutes. It is said to harbour a legendary lake monster resembling a reptile or crocodile, surfacing in sudden bursts that churn the surface, as if it had swallowed something enormous. Witnesses described the entity rolling and plunging so forcefully that waves ripple across the loch, like those caused by a passing ship, even when none is nearby. Despite such perils, the surrounding park embraces the water with steep hills and forested slopes, turning this stretch into the moody centrepiece of an outdoor story. Long before it became a park, this whole Trossachs area was a wild border zone where fights, ambushes and secret meetings shaped who controlled the Central Highlands. The place gained a fierce reputation as a rebel hideout, where outlaws melted into woods and gorges so well that full search parties walked past them. Clan raids cut through these passes at night, with cattle driven fast along loch edges and over narrow tracks that now feel calm and scenic. Ballads took the Trossachs and turned them into a symbol of fierce freedom, and the landscape became famous as a stage for resistance, long before mass tourism. The whole area later drew early holiday crowds, strongly enough that it became known as a cradle of modern tourism in this part of the world. Some writers used the Trossachs as a backdrop for epic poems that mixed real places with wild drama, making lochs and glens feel like characters. And from one quiet viewing hide, ospreys swing over the water and fold their wings to slam into the loch, as if trying to get some spotlight. This species has a white head with a dark eye stripe that makes its stare look sharper against the sky. Its outer toe can swivel backward, letting two claws face forward and two face back, locking slippery fish in a living four-pronged clamp. The underside of each foot carries rough spines like sandpaper pads that grip wet scales tightly, so fish rarely escape once caught. An osprey can spot a fish from high above the water, then hover and drop in a steep dive before hitting the surface, feet first like a thrown harpoon. When it lands on a branch, it twists the fish so the head points forward, which reduces air drag and keeps balance steady while it eats. Its wings bend in a way that lets it shake water off mid-flight, turning a soaking plunge into a fast reset for the next hunt. Light filters through the trees in the same area, as the fallow deer make grazing shapes with palm-shaped antlers and dappled backs. They have spotted coats that break up their outlines so well that a still animal can vanish against patchy grass and shade. The males grow broad, flat antlers like open hands, with many points spreading from a single palm. During rut, bucks pace and thrash these antlers into scrub and small trees, shredding bark and leaving scarred markers across their ground. Their trot over grass comes with a sharp, bouncing step that allows them to switch to a high, springy leap if danger appears. Fallow deer often graze in shifting groups, with heads dropping and rising in a rhythm that keeps many eyes scanning for movement. At woodland edges, they pick leaves and soft shoots with quick bites, trimming branches into oddly neat lines just at muzzle height. A ring of road encircles the far north like a looped string, connecting cliffs, beaches and ruins into a single journey you can follow by tyre tracks. The north coast 500 threads through fishing villages, battlefields and stone circles, transforming a modern drive into an exploration of fragile traces scattered along empty headlands. Some coves sheltered smuggler boats that slipped in under the cover of night, unloading barrels and goods while excisemen rested inland. War convoys once crept along these shores under blackout conditions, avoiding submarines while headlands remained unlit to obscure enemy observation. Lochs near the route are linked to water spirits believed to drag riders and horses beneath smooth surfaces, turning serene waters into sudden hazards. Grand residences dot the journey, revealing royal connections and hunting grounds that extended from hilltops to the shore. One of them is Dunrobin Palace, a long-fronted residence of pale stone overlooking the Moray Firth like a stage set for authority, with pointed roofs and compact gardens. Perched atop a hill, it functioned as both home and stronghold, offering sweeping views of ship movements and inland routes in a single glance. Power struggles were fierce. One defeated lord had his head placed on a spear above the walls to warn anyone thinking of reclaiming the estate. Another heir met his fate while grappling for control among the gardens, and even the neat lawns outside once served as battlegrounds rather than leisure grounds. Far along the coastal route, a road dips toward a cliff where a yawning opening in the rock swallows a river into echoing chambers. The sea has hollowed tunnels beneath the cliff so fiercely that parts of the overhang are empty, like a skull with its jaw open to the bay. Archaeologists excavated the cave floor and uncovered layers of charcoal and worked bone, showing people returned here across different eras for shelter and labour. In forests and moors distant from the coast, the Scottish wildcat moves silently through grass and scrub, its heavy ringed tail held low and alert. It looks like an overbuilt tabby, with a broad head, thick body, and bold black stripes that stop in a blunt, ringed tail. Its tail is thick and bushy, working almost like a balance pole when the cat walks along logs or rock edges. The wildcat's whiskers are long and stiff, helping it read narrow gaps and judge whether its body can pass through tight spaces in the dark. It hunts by creeping low through grass, freezing just before a pounce, then rushing forward in a short burst aimed at the neck of its prey. This predator eats mostly rabbits, mice and voles, often caching leftover pieces by burying them for later nights. Scent marks, scat, and urine lines map out its territory, turning tree roots and stones into a network of chemical signposts that other wildcats can read. A towering stone structure rises on a rocky hill where a nation once placed its hopes on a single fighter who refused to yield to an invading force. The National Wallace Monument looms above Stirling, built to honour William Wallace after his violent end transformed him from rebel into symbol. Its creation sparked fierce debates over which account of Wallace's life should be included, turning the project into a fresh political conflict. During construction, a mason's cart slipped on the steep incline, sending him tumbling and giving the structure its first tragedy even before it opened. Another jagged ridge rises like a broken spine from low ground, its top scattered with stone teeth that look sharp enough to bite the clouds. Stack Pollard is a small but fierce-looking peak in the north, famous for a shattered summit ridge that feels more like a ruin than a normal hilltop. The summit is ringed with rock towers that give almost no safe grip, making reaching the very top feel less like a walk and more like sneaking into a stone trap. Wind around the crest can change direction in a snap, slamming into climbers from the side as if the mountain is trying to shrug them off. Stories link these odd-shaped mountains to a hammer-wielding winter figure who is said to have carved them in anger, leaving rough scars instead of smooth curves. Clava Cairns looks quiet now, but the area is full of unusual designs and careful planning focused on burials. The terrace has a group of graves and stone rings, forming a small settlement for those laid to rest. A narrow stream splits the area into two parts, almost like two cemeteries facing each other. The cairns and rings line up with the winter sunset very precisely, acting like a giant calendar for that time of year. On each ring, some stones are taller on one side and shorter on the other, showing the builders controlled how the sky could be seen, not just the graves. Later burials were added inside some cairns, meaning people kept using the same area long after it was first built. Steel waterfall flows at the head of Glen Nevis, where towering rock walls and plunging water create an arena alive with sound and movement. The access path has suffered rock and mudslides that interrupt the trail, requiring rescue teams to guide visitors over unstable terrain. The gorge is notorious for treacherous footing, with people slipping on slick boulders into the river during sudden surges. Floods can transform calm stream crossings into raging channels, blocking the way and trapping travellers until water levels drop. The cliffs, falls and narrow valley have drawn filmmakers, providing dramatic settings for action sequences. Mist and spray from the cascade can reduce visibility in poor conditions, making it easy to lose the trail on the return journey. Lerwick began as a rough strip of booths and huts along the shore, wild enough that distant authorities wanted the settlement erased due to crime and disorder. It expanded during herring seasons, when sudden wealth, drink and strangers arrived faster than any rules could keep pace. Smuggling thrived, with cellars, alleys and boats forming a hidden network, moving contraband in and out of the harbour. The town occupied a liminal space between law and ocean, where punishments, brawls and unexplained vanishings were part of everyday existence. Houses earned notorious reputations. Twaggio's house, for instance, was eventually demolished after enduring countless accounts of footsteps and ominous events. Fortunes rose and fell with single fishing seasons, leaving residents to live as if each day depended on chance. Violence also occurred often enough that distant officials regarded Lerwick as a problem to be corrected, rather than merely overseen. Inverary is an estate transformed to suit a single powerful family, with a town cleared and rebuilt so that every street led directly toward the residence. The building was designed for both prestige and control, positioned beside the water to ensure that anyone arriving by loch or road felt observed before stepping ashore. A massive fire consumed parts of the structure in the past, prompting extensive restoration. The walls that remain carry a history of smoke, loss, and reconstruction. The grounds are linked to a chilling tale of a phantom war galley that glides across the nearby loch, appearing before the passing of a clan chief. Music reportedly erupts through the building prior to major family events, giving it a reputation for sensing misfortune ahead of others. A murdered harpist is said to have brought his spirit from the former residence into the new one, embedding the haunting into the furniture as well as the walls. Iona Abbey occupies a small island that became a launch pad for new faith, zealous preaching, and power struggles that reached across the seas. The abbey became so important that rulers wanted to be buried nearby, turning the whole island into a crowded graveyard for high-status dead. Viking raiders struck repeatedly, dragging warriors into sacred areas, aware that treasures and manuscripts were safeguarded within. The attacks were so fierce that relics of the abbey's founder were secretly moved away, splitting the spiritual core of the place into pieces stored in far-off houses. Over time, the complex transformed from a thriving monastery to partial ruin, and later a restored church. Writers eventually portrayed Iona as a place where the boundary between worlds feels thin, giving it a reputation as a spiritual edge of the map. This volcanic mass rises from open water, transformed into a fortified island that feels more like confinement than shelter. Bassrock earned fear as a government detention outpost, where faith-driven dissenters were sealed inside cramped chambers, bordered by plunging cliffs and relentless waves. Captives remained near the precipice, as violent weather hurled seawater straight indoors, coating iron restraints and masonry surfaces in corrosive vapour. Later, an insurgent faction captured this position, maintaining control for years while resisting authority from a single offshore bastion. Construction of a guiding beacon dismantled remaining defences, recycling quarried blocks into the tower that now signals passing vessels. During nesting months, northern gannets overwhelm every ledge, turning stone and air into a roaring surge of feathers, motion, and sound. They wear a clean white coat with black wingtips and a pale golden head that stands out against dark water. Their long, dagger-like bills have no external nostrils, which helps them hit the sea at extreme speeds without flooding the skull. Special air sacs under their skin work like built-in cushions, letting them dive from high in the air straight into water without breaking bones. The birds lock their wings tight and fold their bodies into living spears, cutting into the sea to grab fish hidden far below the surface. Gannets nest shoulder to shoulder on ledges, stacking packed colonies dense enough that the rock surface nearly disappears under birds. On land, strong webbed feet grip rock and turf, stamping and shuffling in small fencing dances as they greet partners at the nest. Giant metal horse heads rise out of flat ground here, but the story behind them comes from something far meaner than any normal farm animal. The Kelpies in Helix Park stand where canals and industry once ruled, turning a quiet junction of waterways into a place watched over by two towering steel figures. Their name comes from lake and river spirits that waited by the water as perfect, shiny ponies, just close enough to tempt anyone needing a ride. The animal's skin supposedly turned sticky like glue the moment someone touched it, trapping hands and legs to its back. Once the victim was stuck, the waterhorse would bolt straight into the lowest part of the loch, holding its passenger under until the body fell still. Some tales say only a few body parts floated back to shore, thrown up like leftovers to scare anyone who might try the same river crossing later. The modern Kelpies sculptures twist all of that into metal, and the same area that once used heavy horses on towpaths now has steel heads, honouring legend and work power. This stone city rests on cooled lava and buried streets, where every layer feels like it was built on someone else's fear or bad luck. Edinburgh once shut 6 streets off from the world, walling people in with the plague to keep the disease trapped, along with the still living. Plague doctors in long coats walk these slopes with beaked masks, stepping through alleys stacked with bodies waiting for the mortuary carts. The town became a body-snatching hotspot where fresh graves needed iron bars because stolen corpses could buy a whole year's pay from surgeons. Its law and church powers worked together so tightly that sin, crime and sickness all felt like one long threat hanging over every doorstep. On the highest rock above this maze, Edinburgh Castle anchors the skyline like a grim watchtower over everything that has happened below. It has functioned as a royal stronghold, prison, armoury, and emblem of authority, enduring more sieges than nearly any fortress in the region. Executions and torture once occurred under its shadow, while the forecourt absorbed screams, ash and final prayers. The Black Dinner unfolded here when 2 young nobles were summoned to a feast and abruptly confronted with a bull's head on the table, signalling they would be executed outside. A solitary piper also entered tunnels beneath the rock, vanishing mid-song as the music halted abruptly, leaving a story that the passageways below do not always return visitors. In addition, phantom dogs have been observed, with tiny figures darting among the stones and spectral paws echoing along paths where no animal roams. Down the ridge, the Palace of Holyrood House rises at the far end of the Royal Mile, linking regal life to this forbidding fortress through one continuous street. Began as a royal residence beside an abbey, where authority, devotion, and burial coexisted within a single walled enclosure. A notorious murder transformed the palace into a scene of horror when a royal secretary was dragged from a supper chamber and stabbed repeatedly nearby. Fears of witchcraft also swept through the halls, as the monarch linked to the residents became fascinated with occult practices after stormy voyages. Agnes Sampson endured brutal interrogation, her hair torn from her scalp as inquisitors examined her skin for a supposed devil's mark. The palace marks the end of a path from a cliff-top fortress where raw power transforms into royal ceremony along the Royal Mile. This avenue became the main route for parades, processions and movement between the fortress above and the palace below. Merchants worked in cramped booths along the route, dumping waste directly into the gutters outside their doors. Beneath certain buildings, vaults transformed into drinking dens, storage areas, and rumoured spaces for crime and ritual. Plague carts traversed this road, collecting bodies from overcrowded houses and taking them to communal burial grounds. Near its centre, St Giles's Cathedral rises as the main church, its spires overseeing the flow of people and secrets. One influential leader was hanged outside this location. His head was mounted on a spike, and his limbs were distributed across the kingdom as a warning. Later, a rival's body returned for a grand funeral, with the same church honouring one figure while condemning another, all within the same stone walls. Visitors to St Giles's sometimes report feeling 3 sharp strikes on the back of the neck, often followed by sudden misfortune. This pattern appears connected to beheadings near the building, as if the force of the executioner's blow lingers in the air. The cathedral has undergone numerous alterations, restorations and expansions, subtly recording shifts in authority between different religious factions. Nearby Greyfriars Kirkyard carries a heavier atmosphere, filled with accounts of a violent poltergeist and scratch marks left on those passing through its gates. It is a twisted maze of tombs and lairs, where the line between burial ground and prison yard blurred, leaving the soil to hold both punishment and tranquility. One section kept rows of chained individuals exposed to the cold, transforming the yard into a slow-motion execution chamber. From a single grand tomb, the Mackenzie poltergeist is blamed for scratches, bruises, and sudden blackouts, with visitors collapsing during tours as if struck by an invisible force. Some leave the grounds with bites and burns that were absent at the entrance, as though something lingering in the air completed the assault on the way home. Fires have erupted in nearby dwellings connected to those who focused intensely on the entity, erasing notes and records as if the graveyard demanded its narrative returned. Beyond the walls, the Scott monument stands like a jagged spire, piercing the sky as a stone quill for ghostly tales. It rises as a Gothic tower adorned with arches and stone claws, designed to draw readers' eyes upward toward the sky, evoking the imagination of every wild tale penned by its inspiration. Its structure was conceived by a self-taught joiner who adopted a fictitious medieval identity, transforming the project into a secret identity triumph. The creator perished in an accident before completion, and the final stones were placed as a monument that claimed its own maker. Once ranking among the tallest constructions in the city, its shadow extended over gardens and streets, stretching like the hand of a giant clock. Mill wheels once spun so constantly just near it that the whole valley sounded like a slow metal heartbeat from dawn to dark. Dean Village began as a milling settlement on the water of Leith, built to grind grain for the city using the river's force. At its peak, it carried a chain of waterworks so close together that flour dust floated over the roofs like a pale fog. Workers' homes were crammed right beside the machinery, making sleep happen only a few steps away from thudding gears and grinding stones. Workers once feared dust explosions so much that sudden silence from a wheel felt scarier than the constant grind of gears. When a major landslide and closures hit the operations, the shutdown wiped out water-powered work along this stretch in one move, like someone pulling the plug on the whole job system. On a low summit above the streets, stone towers and half-finished temples cluster like a miniature city of abandoned ambitions. Calton Hill became a stage for ambitious plans and collective memory, transforming one small rise into a showcase of authority and pride. The hill has hosted monuments honouring those lost in distant conflicts, turning the entire top into a quiet, open memorial platform. The nickname Edinburgh's Folly arose from promises that wealth and determination could not fully fulfil. Among the scattered columns, the city feels distant despite its proximity, as if the elevation has slipped sideways into another era. At the centre of these broken classical pillars rises the National Monument of Scotland, a colossal unfinished skeleton of a temple. It is a grand replica of a temple that began with the ambition of creating a national shrine, but funding ran out, leaving only a skeletal structure. Its unfinished state earned grim nicknames such as Scotland's Folly and Edinburgh's Disgrace, turning the monument into a symbol of pride tangled with disappointment. Each massive column forms part of a construction that never received a roof, leaving open sky above the intended sacred hall. Political disputes and financial hurdles halted progress abruptly, freezing the project mid-stride, like a statue left incomplete. Among the empty spaces, a small bird with a precise, patterned song occasionally lands on the railings, where the Eurasian chaffinch contributes its sharp, lively call to the ruin. It wears blue-grey and rust tones on the male body, with bold wing bars that flash white when it darts through trees. Its song is a fast, tumbling phrase that ends in a sharp flourish, like a tiny musical slide fired from a treetop. Young chaffinches must hear adult males during a short learning window, or their song stays rough and unfinished for life. Males can hold different song dialects in different regions, turning forests into patches of slightly different musical accents. The bird uses a range of calls, including a special alarm sound that switches on when predators are near the nest. Its bill changes toughness with the seasons, helping it crack hard seeds in some months and pick softer food at other times. This winged creature also darts through the stone government fortress, once a grim jail, now a centre of administration. St Andrew's House unified scattered departments under a single metal-framed structure, concentrating authority for the region within one imposing building. The location was previously Calton Jail, and beneath the car park rest the remains of executed murderers. Only the governor's house endured the demolition, standing beside the offices like a watchtower from a former era. Long debates shaped the project, with arguments over whether the final design should be bold or restrained. Upon completion, the complex became one of the largest metal-framed constructions in Europe, a concrete declaration that governance had replaced punishment. From its edge, the eye is drawn toward a jagged volcanic hill where legends and unusual discoveries gather. Arthur's Seat rises above the city. It is an extinct volcano that forms the city's high watch point, its crags and ridges rising sharply against the sky. Its name evokes legends of King Arthur, with some suggesting it as a possible location for his legendary stronghold. On one slope, a secluded cave once contained 17 tiny coffins, each holding a small wooden figure arranged with care. These miniature burials inspired theories of witchcraft, secret rites, or memorials for those lost far from shore. Observers describe the find as a workshop of satanic spells, turning the hill into a suspected altar of magic. Other explanations connect it to maritime superstitions, such as charms intended to safeguard sailors whose bodies vanished at sea. From the summit, the red form of a massive steel bridge stretches across the water, carrying trains over the Forth Firth. This bridge became a symbol of daring engineering, extending farther than anyone imagined possible with iron and rivets. Construction claimed many lives, as workers fell, succumbed to illness, or were swept away by tides and forgotten over time. Its outline in fog can resemble the skeleton of a colossal metal beast crossing the Firth, giving it an eerie presence even without legends. Over the years, the structure has witnessed wars, shipwrecks, and the transformation of cities on both shores, remaining a quiet observer of almost every major change in the region. This royal retreat in the Highlands was a private vision of forests, rivers, and hunting grounds, yet it witnessed intense moments in regal life. Balmoral grew from an acquired estate into a personal realm of lodges, moors, and secret corners, owned outright rather than by the state. The original house was deemed too small and quietly replaced by the current baronial residence nearby. During the war, the property served as a secure base, keeping the royal family away from bombing zones. Somewhere in the region, a ring of rough stones rises from low ground, where fires once burned hot enough to crack bone, wood, and rock together in a single glow. Colourly stone circles served as a Bronze Age cremation area, where 8 upright blocks formed a perimeter around repeated burnings of bodies, timber, and offerings. Within the enclosure, 8 small cairns were added later, each acting as its own fire island, with fragments of human remains and thick charcoal buried beneath layers of stone. The largest central cairn featured a double ring of curbstones covering a pit packed with charcoal chunks and cremated bones, forming a core chamber for the most intense rite. Smoke, stone, and neon coil around a river city that once forged ships and ideas at a pace that made every street pulse with restless energy. Glasgow grew from a small religious settlement into an industrial powerhouse, its shipyards and factories transforming the River Clyde into a busy channel of steel and ambition. Certain pubs built atop earlier foundations have cellars where glasses glide across tables on perfectly level boards. Fires and disasters from the past left memorials across the city, and modern avenues often run through the shadows of sudden loss and tragedy. Glasgow Cathedral rises from this ground as a survivor of countless storms, carrying both worship and ghostly tales within its walls. This stone church endured through reform, conflict and urban transformation, while many sacred places were replaced. Its crypt features low arches and pillars where shadows press close, particularly when footsteps appear with no visible source. Visitors in the nave sometimes notice a sweet, unusual scent drifting through the air, even when no service occurs and no candles burn. The graveyard beyond the walls and the hill behind the building became the city's grand city of the dead, lending the area a dual life of worship and mourning. Faces and beasts line the walls, seeming to watch every aisle, and some swear the expressions shift when observed again. From here, paths descend toward the River Clyde waterfront, where trade, industry, and river spirits converge along a long stretch of water and stone. It once roared with shipyards that launched massive vessels, shaking the ground as hulls slid into the river. Along certain stretches of quay, phantom foghorns sound on clear days, though no boats are visible upstream or downstream. Workers were sometimes seen balancing on beams that no longer remain, stepping into empty air before vanishing above the water. Stories tell of a dripping figure pacing along the embankment, leaving no trace on the stone beneath. Beneath the surface, wrecks and abandoned cargo lie hidden, while on still evenings, metallic clinks rise as if chains drag along the riverbed. Bridges spanning the Clyde gained eerie reputations, with sudden apparitions appearing on railings, sparking countless accounts linked to tragic events from the city's past. Overlooking this scene, Necropolis Hill rises with its sprawling graveyard, connecting the restless river to a skyline marked by silent monuments and weathered stone markers. It was designed like a garden cemetery, where visitors once wandered along paths among countless graves. Its most notorious night occurred when throngs of children surged through the southern necropolis, armed with sticks and knives, hunting a vampire with iron teeth. The Gorbals vampire panic became so intense that city authorities blamed horror comics and imposed limits on what stories youngsters could read. Some statues on graves are said to subtly change their expressions, shifting from neutral to faint smirks or frowns in moments. Whispering voices have also been captured near monuments, even when no wind blows and no one is nearby. From this vantage point, the view stretches toward Argyll, a region of lochs, islands, and ruined strongholds where further legends, monsters, and long-standing feuds linger among the hills. Argyll became a stronghold of powerful clans and early Christian communities, with glens and shores filled with ruined fortresses and sacred spots close together. Island chapels and wells are linked to saints who battled the devil for control of territory, dividing good and bad ground by drawing lots. Loch is lined with crannogs, man-made platforms where people built homes on the water to stay safe from wolves and raiders. Kilchurn rises from that area like a stone watchtower over the quiet water, surrounded by monster lore and clan legends. It began as a fortified island base for a powerful clan, linking control of the Loch and neighbouring lands to whoever held its walls. Occasionally, flooded fields transform the ruin into a temporary island, creating the impression that it has risen from the shoreline. The structure's past includes sieges and power struggles, with its ramparts changing hands as rival factions fought for dominance over this inland waterway. At sundown, the fortress silhouette looms over tales of saints, devils, and monsters tied to the loch and surrounding islets. The waters near the ruin host modern boat tours that glide along its walls while scanning for unusual movement on the surface. From this lochside stronghold, roads lead toward a harbour town where ferries, fishing vessels, and excursion boats converge in a sheltered bay. Oban harbourfront grew into a little bay gateway where war fleets, fishing boats and ferries funnelled along the curved shoreline. The waterfront still carries the shadow of a sudden royal loss on Carrera, as if ambitious plans could collapse in a single night just offshore. Storms have thrown vessels onto reefs, with names whispered as warnings, and every calm view across the water hides stories of shattered hulls. As the gateway to the Isles, Oban became a stage where giants, sea spirits, and storm gods from Hebridean lore passed through legend. The harbour front has long marked departures and returns, with men setting out for war, trade, or distant islands, some never reaching this curve of shore again. Only white-tailed sea eagles glide confidently over the waters, swooping to snatch fish in one clean motion that leaves everyone on deck staring. These massive raptors have broad wings and a blocky body, giving them the appearance of flying doors in the sky. Adult tails turn white, forming a bold flag that contrasts sharply against hills or sea cliffs. They excel at snatching fish directly from the water, diving with such precision that a single swoop lifts a heavy catch without a splash. This is Scotland, a land of hidden wonders and remarkable architectural marvels. Now, if you don't want to miss the most unreal wonders of Nepal, check out this video.